A decisive new chapter, it seems, just began in the ongoing battle against transnational drug cartels.
Yes, reports are indicating the U.S. military is now authorized to directly confront these violent organizations.
A move that could fundamentally reshape how America fights the fentanyl crisis, which is just devastating our communities.
Absolutely. For too long, these ruthless groups, like Sinaloa and the Jalisco New Generation cartels, they've operated with, well, devastating impunity.
Flooding our towns with lethal drugs, profiting from just unspeakable human misery. It's like a silent invasion.
And it's claiming tens of thousands of American lives every year. It's ignited this fierce debate about the strongest way forward.
And the Trump administration responded boldly, didn't they? Designating these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
That's right. A critical shift, really, that potentially enables the military to target these networks directly.
Wherever they hide.
Yeah.
At sea, on foreign soil. It's a direct effort to protect the homeland.
But this aggressive stance, as you'd expect, immediately sparked a heated dispute with Mexico.
Right. President Claudia Sheinbaum, she vociferously rejected any U.S. military presence, calling it a blatant violation of Mexico's sovereignty.
And warning of potentially disastrous consequences for, vital bilateral cooperation.
So the critical question looms large now. Can America finally crush these transnational threats and secure its borders with this unprecedented military resolve?
Or will this strategy, necessary as some see it, but certainly controversial, ignite an even larger, maybe more unpredictable conflict right on our doorstep?
Okay, let's try and unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into the intricate, highly charged issue of U.S. military action against Mexican cartels.
And we're drawing from a whole range of sources here: legal analyses, official declarations, news reports, historical documents.
Trying to give you the fullest, most impartial picture possible. And joining me, as always, is our expert guide to help navigate these complex, often murky waters.
Happy to be here.
So the U.S. is going big, officially labeling several powerful Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
Yeah.
Beyond the headlines, what does that actually unlock, in terms of how the U.S. can respond?
Well, it absolutely does unlock new avenues. The Trump administration's move back in February 2025 officially designated several Mexican and other Latin American organized crime groups as FTOs.
Okay.
Now, the stated primary purpose, the main goal, is to significantly enhance counterterrorism measures.
Counterterrorism. Against drug cartels.
Exactly. We're talking about tools to specifically target the financial resources, the material support of these cartels, trying to disrupt their operations at a sort of fundamental level.
Much like how the U.S. would target groups like al-Qaeda, you mean?
That's the idea, yes.
Yeah.
Aiming to dismantle the network, not just seize the drugs.
And the crucial part here, the really controversial part, is the implied link to military action. Now, legal experts might say an FTO designation doesn't automatically mean war.
Right. They do emphasize that FTO status doesn't inherently grant wartime military authority in the traditional sense.
But history certainly suggests otherwise, doesn't it? These designations often seem to lead somewhere kinetic.
Precisely. The historical precedent is, well, undeniable. Such designations have often paved the way for kinetic action, meaning direct military engagement.
So how does that work legally or potentially legally?
Well, in theory, such a designation could permit the U.S. military to operate abroad under the Authorization for Use of Military Force, the AUMF.
Yeah, the post-9/11 AUMF.
That's the one, though its application here is legally debated. But the administration frames these cartel groups as a, quote, national security threat beyond that posed by traditional organized crime.
Citing what? Their violence?
Their extreme violence, yes, their deep infiltration into foreign governments, and of course their overwhelming role in drug trafficking.
That's a massive escalation in rhetoric and potentially action. So we're talking about possibly moving from traditional law enforcement...
with full-blown military engagement, yes.
What's driving this push now? Why the intense focus on fentanyl?
It's largely driven by the fentanyl crisis, without a doubt. Mexico has become the primary producer and supplier of illicit fentanyl reaching the U.S.
And the death toll is just staggering.
It is. Tens of thousands of U.S. overdose deaths annually. It's a public health catastrophe that's been effectively reframed as a national security emergency.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio had that quote right about treating them differently.
Yes, he captured the sentiment exactly. He said, and I'm quoting him directly, "We have to start treating them as armed terrorist organizations, not simply drug-dealing organizations."
And that perspective led to direct action from the White House.
It did. On August 8, 2025, reports emerged that President Trump secretly signed a directive to the Pentagon, formally authorizing military force against these newly designated groups.
Secretly signed. Wow.
So, for you, the listener trying to grasp this, understand that this isn't just about slapping a new label on these groups. It's a profound, tangible shift.
A shift in how the U.S. is prepared to fight drug trafficking.
Exactly. We're talking about a potential move from handcuffs to military hardware, and that fundamentally changes everything.
Okay, so that's Washington's perspective, this aggressive new stance. But what happens when you draw a line in someone else's sand? Let's turn to Mexico. How are they reacting?
Well, predictably, their reaction has been swift and incredibly forceful. Mexican officials, especially President Claudia Sheinbaum, have vehemently rejected any U.S. military intervention.
Calling it what? A violation of sovereignty.
Unequivocally, a violation of Mexico's sovereignty. President Sheinbaum has been remarkably explicit. She stated, and again I'm quoting, "There will be no invasion of Mexico."
So absolutely ruling it out.
Declaring any such action absolutely off the table. She insists the only viable path forward is through robust cooperation, not coercion or any form of subordination.
A partnership of equals is how they see it.
That's the framing, yes. Not a situation where one dictates terms to the other.
And this isn't just political posturing, right? There's a deeper historical context here. This red line on sovereignty for Mexico. It feels very significant.
Absolutely. It's deeply ingrained in Mexico's national psyche. It's not just about current events. It's rooted in a long, often painful history of U.S. intervention.
Like what examples?
Well, you can go way back to the Mexican-American War, but even more recently, think about the 1989 U.S. invasion of Panama. That was widely condemned by the UN, fueled anti-interventionist sentiment across Latin America.
And there was that incident with the general more recently.
Right. In 2020, the unilateral U.S. arrest of former Mexican Defense Minister General Cienfuegos on drug charges without prior consultation. That severely strained relations.
I remember that. It caused a huge diplomatic row.
It did. These historical instances, and many others, have cemented a profound national sensitivity to foreign incursions. It's a point of national pride and security.
So to a Mexican leader, any suggestion of U.S. troops on their soil?
Even for a shared problem like cartels, it evokes this powerful historical echo that resonates deeply with the population. She even proposed a constitutional amendment to explicitly reject foreign interventions.
Wow, writing it into the Constitution.
Yes. So what this means for you, the listener, is that Mexico's rejection isn't merely diplomatic maneuvering. It's a fundamental declaration of national self-determination.
And crossing that line could really dismantle existing cooperation.
Potentially. Leading to unpredictable and possibly devastating consequences for both nations.
Okay, the moment we talk military action, especially across borders, the legal questions just explode. So where do things stand legally? Domestically in the U.S. and internationally? It sounds like a minefield.
It certainly is. Let's start with U.S. domestic law. The Constitution, Article 1, grants Congress the power to declare war. That's the big one.
A significant check on presidential power.
Absolutely. Now, while an authorization for use of military force, like the post-9/11 one for al-Qaeda, exists, it doesn't automatically extend to all FTOs. That AUMF was specific.
So military action against cartels would rely more on the president's own authority.
Primarily, yes. On the president's Article 2 authority as commander-in-chief. Presidents often interpret these powers broadly for, say, national self-defense.
Like arguing protecting U.S. citizens from fentanyl falls under that.
That's likely the argument, protecting citizens from that threat.
But there's a crucial caveat there, isn't there? It can't just be any military action. It can't cross the line into war in the constitutional sense. What's that distinction? Why does it matter?
That's the tricky part, a very fine line. War in the constitutional sense isn't easily defined. It's a legal concept where courts and scholars look at the nature, scope, and duration of the military operation.
Okay.
They look at the risk of escalation, the potential for casualties. If an action seems too large, too long, too risky in these areas,
it could be deemed an act of war needing explicit congressional approval.
Exactly. Then there's also the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878.
Right, the one that generally prohibits the military from acting as domestic police.
Correct. So if the military were deployed inside the U.S. for drug arrests, that would likely violate the act, which kind of pushes the justification towards using the military outside the U.S.
And given all these domestic legal knots, I imagine such a directive if it wasn't explicitly approved by Congress, could face serious legal challenges.
Oh, absolutely. It would almost certainly face domestic legal challenges regarding the president's authority. Lawmakers, civil liberties groups, maybe even other government branches could sue.
Questioning if the executive is overstepping its constitutional bounds.
Precisely. Now, shift to international law, and the picture gets even more complicated.
How so?
Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, it's crystal clear, prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state without that state's consent.
A bedrock principle.
Foundational.
Yeah.
Now, Article 51 allows for self-defense against an armed attack. But legal experts widely argue that fentanyl trafficking, horrific as it is,
doesn't legally count as an armed attack under international law.
correct, not in the sense required for unilateral military action. Therefore, U.S. military action on Mexican territory without consent would very likely violate the UN Charter.
Which could alienate allies, undermine international norms.
Exactly. Big diplomatic fallout potential.
Yet, it's worth noting, the U.S. government's own lawyers, the Office of Legal Counsel, they've taken a rather flexible view on this in the past.
They have. It's a fascinating and controversial detail. The OLC has previously opined that the president might unilaterally override the UN Charter's prohibition in certain national security circumstances.
Suggesting legality might not be seen as an insurmountable obstacle if the political will is there.
That's the implication, yes. It speaks to a very expansive view of executive power. And just one more point here, from an academic angle, this FTO designation itself is a huge shift.
Oh, so?
Traditionally, terrorism is defined by political or ideological goals, right? Not purely financial gain. But with this move, the U.S. is essentially saying these cartel activities, despite being profit-driven, are so destabilizing, so violent, so impactful on national security that they warrant the terrorism label.
Which could reshape how we fight narco-terrorism globally.
Potentially, yes. Blurring lines, expanding the definition of when military force against non-state actors inside another country might be considered justifiable, at least by the U.S.
So what's fascinating here for you, the listener, is really seeing how the executive branch might stretch its interpretation of power.
To justify actions that many legal experts see as potentially violating both domestic constitutional principles and established international law. A real tangle.
So the legal landscape is clearly fraught, raising serious questions about how the U.S. can even pursue this strategy. But let's get down to brass tacks. Even if they find a legal path, will this rolled military move actually work? Will it crush the cartels, stop the drugs? Or will it, as we wondered at the start, ignite something worse?
Well, the consensus from many sources, many experts, suggests that military action alone would likely be highly ineffective in significantly impacting the overall drug flow, especially for fentanyl.
Why ineffective?
Several reasons. First, the fentanyl labs themselves. They're incredibly low-tech, basic chemistry, available precursors. You can set one up in a garage, a hidden room.
Easy to move, easy to rebuild.
Exactly. Taking one out is temporary. Also, we've seen this play out historically. You remove top cartel leaders, and new ones quickly emerge, sometimes leading to more fragmentation and intense violent competition.
The kingpin strategy has its limits.
It does. And past U.S. military counter-narcotics efforts, think Afghanistan, famously yielded, quote, underwhelming results, despite huge investment.
And there's that crucial point about where the drugs are actually seized, right?
Yes, that's vital.
Yeah.
Official data shows a striking 80%, 0% of fentanyl seizures at U.S. ports of entry are linked to American individuals crossing through legal checkpoints.
80% through legal checkpoints.
Yeah.
Often by U.S. citizens.
That's the data. It suggests this isn't just about stopping illegal crossings in the desert. It's a sophisticated supply chain, often using everyday traffic and U.S. persons.
That figure really highlights the complexity. A military approach at the border might be missing the main transit points.
Yeah.
Beyond effectiveness, what about the diplomatic fallout with Mexico? They've drawn that red line.
Unilateral action would, without a doubt, severely strain bilateral relations, perhaps irrevocably. Mexico has explicitly warned it would stop cooperating on critical issues beyond drug enforcement.
Like what? Trade.
Trade, yes, where billions flow daily. Intelligence sharing, vital for both countries' security. And critically, Mexico warned it would halt cooperation on migration enforcement.
Oh, wow. Their cooperation there has been key recently, hasn't it?
Incredibly effective. Their efforts in 2024 reportedly reduced border crossings by over 60%. Losing that cooperation would be devastating, potentially creating a whole new crisis at the border.
So it could effectively end future counter-narcotics cooperation, too.
Very likely. leaving the U.S. without vital intelligence and partnership on the ground.
So not only might it not work effectively, it could actively make things worse on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
What about the cartels themselves? How do they typically react to this kind of pressure?
They're incredibly adaptable. That's their defining feature, really.
Yeah.
Military targeting would almost certainly lead to increased competition and violence among cartels as they scramble for dominance in a disrupted landscape.
They find workarounds.
Always. They're highly resourceful, they'd adapt quickly, find alternative smuggling routes, more tunnels, maybe submarines, drones, exploiting the U.S. Postal Service even more.
Recruiting more U.S. citizens too, presumably.
Yes, or shifting operations towards the Canadian border. They could also escalate attacks on law enforcement, both in Mexico and potentially even within the U.S. And perhaps most concerning is the risk of retaliation against U.S. citizens.
That's terrifying. Historically, they've avoided that, right?
Largely, yes. Intentionally targeting U.S. interests has been seen as counterproductive, risking an overwhelming response. But direct military attacks could change that calculus. They might retaliate against Americans living or vacationing in Mexico.
Using them as leverage.
Potentially, to pressure the U.S. government to back down. Furthermore, remember, these cartels are deeply embedded in legitimate sectors, avocado farming, tourism.
Right.
A broad FTO designation could risk implicating innocent U.S. companies that unknowingly do business with entities linked, however distantly, to cartels.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture,
it seems that while the U.S. seeks a decisive victory, the potential for deeply counterproductive outcomes, heightened violence, a breakdown in vital cooperation, new dangers for U.S. citizens is very, very real.
it truly paints a picture of a hydra-headed opponent. To fully grasp the challenge, we need to understand the enemy itself. How do these Mexican cartels actually operate? What makes them so formidable, so adaptive?
You're right, calling them gangs doesn't capture it. They are sophisticated, multinational criminal enterprises. Their operations go way beyond just drugs, though that's core.
Cocaine, heroin, meth.
And increasingly, the deadlier synthetics like fentanyl. They're the primary producers and suppliers to the U.S. market now, but that's just one part.
What else are they into?
Massive extortion rackets targeting businesses, individuals. Deep involvement in human trafficking, a truly dark global trade. Rampant kidnapping for ransom. Illegal logging, devastating forests. Billions in fuel theft, controlling vast illegal weapons trades.
That's like a shadow economy.
Exactly, rivaling the GDP of some smaller nations. And it's not just about making money.
It sounds like they operate almost like parallel governments in some areas.
That's a good way to put it. They use their vast profits to systematically corrupt officials, judges, police, politicians. They cultivate these extensive networks that allow them to operate with near impunity.
So they become the de facto rulers.
In some regions, literally yes. Enforcing their own twisted laws, running their own courts, providing a perverse kind of security where the state is absent or compromised. This infiltration means just sending troops might not fix the underlying problem if governance is rotten. And their shift to synthetics like fentanyl, that's a real game changer.
Why specifically?
Hugely profitable, high potency, low production costs. You can make it in small, portable labs, hard to detect, easy to move or rebuild quickly.
And getting it across the border. We mentioned the ports of entry.
Right. Most seizures are at official crossings. They use incredibly diverse methods, hiding drugs in legitimate cargo, complex tunnels, drones, the Postal Service, like we said, and actively recruiting U.S. citizens as mules complicates things immensely.
And their reach and brutality.
Yeah.
Staggering.
It is. They've significantly expanded territorial control within Mexico, maybe 10% to 30% of the country, in just a decade. Imagine a third of a nation effectively under criminal control.
And it's not just Mexico.
No, they operate globally, around 40 countries, truly transnational. And violence, murder, intimidation, beheadings, burning people alive, it's central to their control. It sends a terrifying message.
So this deeper understanding really shows why a simple military fix
It's so unlikely to work against organizations this adaptable, this resourceful, this deeply entrenched. It really is like a hydra. Cut off one head, two more, often more violent, grow in its place.
So we've navigated this complex, really high-stakes landscape of potential U.S. military action against Mexican cartels, from the FTO designation the legal tightrope walk.
To Mexico's firm, historically rooted rejection and the sobering practical implications that could unfold.
We've seen that while the U.S. goal is clear, protect citizens, stop the drugs, the chosen strategy faces huge hurdles.
And could carry substantial, maybe unintended consequences for both nations. A comprehensive, multifaceted approach, robust cooperation with Mexico, tackling demand here in the U.S., addressing corruption that's often suggested as a more effective, sustainable path.
So, what stands out to you from today's deep dive? Here's something to consider. In our interconnected world, where does one nation's right to self-defense truly end and another's sovereignty begin, especially with a shared threat that ignores borders?
And can the most powerful military truly win a war against an enemy profiting from a demand that originates largely within its own borders?
Something to mull over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material.
We hope you feel better informed and ready to explore these critical issues further on your own.